And good day, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. This is your Sensei Al Bob, and I'm coming to you over our Dreamy Dreamland channel on YouTube. Again, remember this is a show for grown-ups. Get the children out of the room. There is no profanity. There is no immoral anything. We do not attack or be mean to anybody. But these are topics that make you think. Now, I find children think better than most grown-ups. They have an open mind. But because of the closed mind of this platform, not Dreamy Dreamland, but YouTube, I have to make this disclaimer, right? And this show is again about our all our relations, and the key to success is good thoughts, bring good words, bring good actions, good experiences, performances, examples, good outcomes, right? So when you look at people like Gandhi and Martin Luther King, whose holiday it was yesterday, you see that they were straight up. They probably wouldn't be able to have a YouTube channel. Their issues would be too, uncomfortable, right? So we have been put into a space where we are, lulled into unconsciousness through our platforms, right? Because our Facebook, our Twitter, all just keep refeeding um, our own opinion back to ourselves as some form of reality. And it's not, you know. Or the only true reality is love's co creation, right? So I want to talk about that. And I was looking, I look at a lot of stuff, and people complain when I send them links. Oh, that's too long. Well, you don't, you just kind of zip through it. People send me a ton of stuff, and I look at everything. And I don't really have a TV in the deep green, but my neighborhood, whoever couch I'm surfing on, I usually have access. And I was watching, things like CNN and MSNBC and Fox. And, here it was Martin Luther King's day. And all they did was take, film, from the 60s and sliced it up and gave a 2 minute or 1 minute or 17-second little blip of, hey, wasn't he a great guy? And hey, look, there's a sale on couches, Martin Luther King Day sale, and you can go to this nightclub, and it's a twerking holiday for Martin Luther. I mean, they've totally taken everything out of context, and don't even talk about what Martin Luther King was talking about. When he was just, when the media could just portray him as the guy who gave the speech, oh, I have a dream, that was fine, just like when Malcolm X could just be portrayed as, calling white people devils, that was fine. But once both those guys had a life of experience to realize that things aren't what they seem to be, that it's a whole nother picture down there, that life is not what it seems to be. And that's where we are in the max, because we have the prince of distraction, the orange carrot boy, and his bully boys in the Senate, and you know what's going on, is a scripted thing. The guys in the Congress, this was a scripted thing. This was understood. This was what was going to happen. That's why he was put in there. And it showed that, you know, no one could believe Donald Trump ran for president. Then no one thought he would win the Republican thing. No one thought he'd win, you know, but he was a buffoon. But no, he's a, game show host. That's what he is. Just like Ronald Reagan was a host for the GE Theater, right? And 22 Team Borax. We live in a corporate world, gang, and that's where we're at, So it was interesting because there was really nothing on the media platforms about, and I was having breakfast at a small little town near the Deep Green, and they put up on the front page of their newspaper, we celebrated Martin Luther King's birthday, and we're celebrating diversity, and everyone in that town is white. And they had a march, and they had white signs with white letters, yellow or some, you barely could see it, and it's celebrating diversity and peace, right? No, just diversity, right? And it was like, really? And there was an article by the mayor. We have no hate people, no, that's sorry, the KKK is just right there, and the White Brotherhood is right there, and now I know all those guys. I eat in the same place for breakfast, and I have my Make America Great hat, and so that's my cover, and I wear, camo, and they've known me for years, so they know that, well, Al, he's a different guy, but he's a righteous guy. He kind of listens to everything we say, and then he gives us something to think about and go, So, my little thing to make, and one reason why the place is peaceful is that for 20 years I've been talking to every side about, hey, that's just your opinion, and that's fine. You can have an opinion, but you can't think it's the only one. And they've kind of gotten to a point where they accept that, right? And we have no black people in this part of the Deep Green, but there used to be lots of farms, and so there were a lot of Mexicans who worked on those farms in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And a lot of them, had kids born here, and so they kind of, rented a house and stayed and, got a little plot of land and started growing some vegetables. Anyway, so, I've been here 20 years, and the 20 years, those Mexicans, Hispanic folks, because they're not all Mexicans, they're from all over the place. Mexico, Central and South America, they're from everywhere. And the fifth largest grouping of people in this 3 counties is Hispanic folk, right? And, and in the last 20 years, all the newish businesses have been these folks, right? And so they all have, when all the big supermarkets moved out, they started selling their own wares in their little stores, and then they started little restaurants, and then they started little dress shops, and they started little car fixing places. And so most of the service work in the 3 counties are the companies, not just the workers, the companies are Hispanic. And I was talking to this one KKK guy, and we were in a Mexican restaurant, right? And everyone hangs out in this Mexican because it's unbelievable food, right? Really, because the only other food in that town is like KFC and Burger King and Hardee's. And so everyone goes to this Mexican place. And anyway, the guy's mouthing off about those people down on the border and they shouldn't be here. And I said, but look where you're having, lunch. Oh, these people are great. I've known them forever. Well, they are Hispanic. They did come from the border. They 20 years ago. But this guy's a lot younger than me, so he doesn't even remember when those guys worked out in the fields and that they would come here, they would travel from different farms to different farms. And the same with the blacks. I mean, I used to work, I had a good friend who worked at we both worked for a law firm writing grants, and he was the guy, he was a database guy. And so he worked at the patent library, but he was really good at getting the germane information on this grant or that grant or, this legal standing or that legal standing. And I was the guy who thought of the visionary point of view for the grant, right? And you put them together, and it was always totally winnable. For the hundreds of grants that we wrote over the 3-year period, I don't think any one of them got turned down. To the point where my friend, we wrote a lot of ones for mega churches, and he was really annoyed about religion. And I said, wait, we should start our own religion. So we did, and we started it by celebrating our God was an oven mitt, because you have the casserole in the oven, put on the oven mitts, and you pull out the casserole. You don't burn your hands. It's a miracle. So our God was an oven mitt, and we worked out a whole theology, and we set it into the IRS, and we got a 501c3, and to have a religion where our God was an oven mitt, right? I wonder what Mike Pence would think about that. And then my friend, he was like, I couldn't believe that we got it. I said, so let's have a religion. So we started up, went around to little towns in the South with a tent and did tent revivals with an oven mitt, right? And, I was schooled as a Catholic priest and a Jewish rabbi. And so I took those two theologies and kind of put them together, and these people would come in and hear what they wanted to hear. That was, our propaganda was so you could accept it. No matter what religion, you could be Protestant or Methodist or Lithuanian or you name it, and we had enough of everybody's religion in there that everybody would say, yeah, okay. But we had real access to, my real passion is to understand things and to have access to information. So we went and looked at patents from the beginning of the patent office. Ben Franklin, that was one of the first things that our government started was, and that was a very interesting thing, because everything we blamed China, that's what we did to Europe. We stole all their technology, and we developed a cheaper labor base because we had slaves. Hey, buddy, what's up, Bob? I am just having breakfast. Yeah, well, I'm having a cup of Java with you too, buddy. And I'm talking about what people believe in. And I'm telling them the story about when I invented a religion based our God was an oven mitt. The casserole's in the oven. You put the gloves on. You pull out the casserole. You don't burn your hands. It's a miracle. And the IRS gave us a 501c3 to start a religion based on our God, the oven mitt. And because I went to school to be a Catholic priest and a Jewish rabbi, I had enough theology to knit a very interesting what's the term? Ontological, I think. Ontological, the meaning to life, right? Why we're here. And we had a traveling, tent revival, right? And all these, we did it in the South, and all these people would come, and we made a lot of money. It's totally legal, and we got along the road. We'd stop off at places that were selling seconds of factory things. Like, I remember one time we bought like 10,000 Brillo pads, and they weren't Brillo, but they were scrubby kind of metally thing with soap in it, and we sold it to them as prayer Brillo pads, right? And things not with the trademark name, but to clean your soul, right? So we did pretty good. And the other thing we because he worked at the patent library, we did a tremendous amount of research on patents, especially um, agrarian and early industrial things, and virtually the cotton gin, invented by a black guy. McCormick Reaper, again, invented by a black guy and Mr. McCormick, because the women and the black people were working in the fields, not the rich guy, not the guys who owned the farms. Their name, you know, were on the titles of the property and on the patents. No, they were in town drinking and whoring and gambling. And so we were constantly going on about mother invention. And, when the Me Too movement showed up, my basic attitude about, so I was in the 60s and 70s, I was in New York. I had all my friends were feminists, my women friends, and I went to all their meetings and all of that. And, I had a lot of girlfriends who were lesbians, and they all said that I was the best lesbian they knew. And, so, I never gave up I kept at it till everyone was satisfied. And so that's kind of where we're at. We're at a place where everything is upside down. We're in the upside down world, and it always has been. But it's because of all of these social media platforms where everyone has access to everything all the time, every place, and it's got this total loop of getting everyone addicted to their own opinion, so they don't listen to anybody else, that's why we were given two ears and one mouth, listen more, speak less, and so I was later, as night went by, I went to the movie channels and the black channel. They had all the black exploitation movies of the 60s and 70s. I watched all of them, and I watched, and they got the idea of freedom and liberation much better than any white people. I never saw white women understand, feminism and liberation better than black women, right? And so there was this one about this guy named Peter Green, and he was a DJ in DC, and he started out in the 70s, and he was like right on the wave of when things were changing, and and he was like a street guy, and he ended up in jail, but he was always, his whole thing was, I'm a con, but I always tell it like it is, right? And so he's like a stand-up comedian and really funny guy. And it told the story of from Kennedy's assassination to like Ronald Reagan, period, right? And what happened to the black movement, when everyone had froze, and they don't do that anymore, and they're trying to be white people, right? That's not liberation. Not when 2,000 people own 60% of all the resources of the planet, right? 2,000 people basically own 6 billion people, right? And then the other are semi-slave middle class. Very much negative energy and insanity around, more than usual. It's not so much that there's more negativity. It's just that we can see it, Donald Trump isn't any more corrupt than anyone else in Congress or the Senate or the Supreme Court or, state legislators. And just go look at North Carolina, Look at any state; they're all corrupt because we live in a fascist, um, you know, totalitarian oligarchy, right? And we are what's it called? The Truth. What is the name of that channel? Truth Stream Media had a really good show on Fabian socialism, right? And it's basically the corporate state. The United States is a capitalist state, and Russia was a state capitalism, right? Same kind of people were in charge of both places, and they were buddies, they were partners. Just like the Democrats and the Republicans. Uh, Murky, pukey, yeah, exactly. And it's been that way since Samaria, since they were putting cuneiforms in clay tablets. It's, been, fake news, post lying, the only way you can tell the truth is how you feel in your heart. You have to think with your heart and feel with your head. So when someone says something nasty to you, instead of getting emotional about it, you go, why'd they say that? What's their problem? Why are they? Because, Kant, who was the French Freud, said, when someone is like pointing at you, their thumb is like right at themselves. When they go, what your problem is, they're talking about themselves, So, and it's been nothing's different. The only difference is the opportunity at hand, which has always been here, Jesus has never left. He didn't leave the building, There's a really good book called Ishmael. It's where this kid and her father and her mother are in Africa, and they're anthropologists, and they get a little gorilla baby that was left alone, and they bring it up so the little girl can have a brother. And basically, they teach the gorilla. I mean, you have to suspend your disbelief, but they teach the gorilla how to read and how to speak, right? So he is like the smartest, guy in the room, right? And he loves the little girl, and then the parents die, and she goes back and she gets her PhD, and she, the gorilla is like, living in the the brownstone in Harvard, right? And writing dissertations, and so he's looking at Homo sapiens sapien, from a gorilla's point of view, a really good a great ethnography on humanity. So go read that book. I forget the guy's name. And he wrote another book called The Story of B. And B was Jesus is always somewhere, right? And the Catholic Church is always trying to kill him because the Catholic Church is the Roman Empire, Holy Roman Empire. That was the Catholic Church. That's the Vatican. The Vatican owns all the science. They own NASA. They own, the basic Hubble telescope was what was known as the keyhole satellites. And all they did with a keyhole satellite was point it up into space, which they already had. They had already been looking around at, where the strangeness was coming, because when I was in the UN, so I was brought up to be an elite Illuminati kind of guy. But because I am your Sensei Al-Bab, I kind of didn't go there. And because, most of my life was, spent doing, being an artist, being a creative person, but still always being a scholar, still always being involved in doing research for them. But, I traveled the world. I did all kinds of things. And because I was never a threat, and I came from that, my dad was, deep in the deep state of the Air Force. Art dolls. Hey, gang. Refabrications, art dolls. My mother used to do that. She used to fix up dolls for kids in orphanages, and she used to make rosary beads. She must have made $250,000. This entity gave her a zillion little plastic beads and nylon string, and she would just kind of make rosary beads. Yep, that was my mom. She refabricated dolls for little girls in orphanages all around the world. My mom, she did some pretty amazing things. She was a painter, she was a poet, and she was a triple Capricorn that ruled the world. Right? Hey, Randy Lee. And so you just had to stay on the good side of my mom, you know. So we've been on now for 25 minutes. When I'm staying out in the deep green, I have the internet, but it doesn't work. So that's why I have to do those little short things. It takes 3 hours to load up a 6-minute little thing. So it's like I have to really go deep in the state and then just be stream of consciousness for about 5 minutes, right? This one, I'm kind of all over the place, trying to have some kind of thread and also respond to you guys, because that's really, other people have, shows like, one of my favorite YouTube channels is Dark Journalism, right? And he has a live chat going on in his show, and he has an assistant, his beautiful assistant that we never get to see. She's like Soupy Sales. She's off on the side of the screen, and she's like White Fang and Black Tooth put together. And she reads them, and if people have a good question, she'll bring it up to them, right? So she doesn't let it interfere. Now, you, the cadre, you're not interfering. That's what this show's about. I respond to what you say, to my best. At night, I right now I can see it pretty good. The light is perfect. I can see the screen. I've got my 3.2 glasses, so it's as strong as it's going to get. And so Martin Luther King, Gandhi, Malcolm X, H. Brown, all the hundreds, thousands of people who were Jesus, right? And that's what this book, the story of B is about, is that people, get themselves into position and then they step up to be Jesus and then they get whacked. Now me, I don't do that. When we don't do that, I'm my best at being my best Al Bob, your Sensei Al Bob. That's what I am. I tell you the story. I'm your griot, right? And I try to be a good example for you, my cadre, to go out there and do amazing things. And I know you are, Yeah, he was an adulterer, What guy isn't, You have to look at what he did, how the real deal of, and so was Gandhi. Gandhi was a real hard, they all are. We're human beings. We're not perfect. We're not saints, And me, I'm pretty good at navigating the situation, And I have my 3 little rules, Doctor, do no harm. Don't get involved without a positive exit strategy, and being there to assist the innocence way. The third one is I don't get involved unless I can learn something or teach something to the situation. So that keeps me pretty much in line, right? And this aquarium where I really am. First wife used to call me a sexy, compassionate computer. She goes, because her thing was she loved to get into arguments and have makeup sex. I said, why do that? Let's just have sex, You're a hot tamale. That's why I'm with you. And you're brilliant, you're smart, you're loads of fun, and I'm here to manifest the best time for the both of us. It took her about a year to go, oh yeah, but she would always when we'd be in a situation, and I would do one of my three little things and say day or do whatever I do, and she goes, "Well, why don't you take credit for that?" I said, "Why should I? You know, that's not my job. My job is to, nuzzle your neck and sleep in your bed and make your life great and make you famous and put you on the front of the spotlight. Me, people in the know already know me. I don't need to be famous. I'm already infamous. Much better to be in the know of the people who rule the frigging world, right? So you don't, yeah. So I'm a homeless guy living on $481, but I'm living like a millionaire. Yep, they have served me well, and my grandma had 28 rules. So there were a number of rules that she had that I still got. One of her rules was to live like a millionaire but not be one. She knew every place in New York City to get a free lunch. She had this little box of these corporate buttons. I mean, if you had this button on, you could go into the executive dining room. And I don't know where she got them, but she had a box of, what do you want to eat? You want it to General Motors or having roast beef? Or you want to go eat at General Electric? We can have, turkey, and she would have these suitcases, Tupperware suitcases. And we would go in there around 1 o'clock. And, they'd have the big buffet and the executives were strolling out and we would be there and we'd eat until they closed down at 4. And she would just hand it to the waiter and the guy would, they were going to throw all the stuff away. He would just, you know, put, had 3 turkeys in the suitcase, 2 roasts and, and that's what we lived on, right? And she knew every theater. We would go to Lincoln Center. We would go to Carnegie Hall. We would go to every theater and the tickets, right? So the rich people would go to the opera, to the ballet, to all these, to Broadway things, and they wouldn't stick around unless it was a really great show. But we would stay where they would walk out and ask for their ticket stubs. And if you have that ticket stub, you can walk in and give it to the guy, and he takes you to the, 1,000 people. And we would go like Wednesday matinee, and there'd be nobody there. We could, I remember roller skating around the place, and she would complain about this or that, and they would give her a come see another movie. And she had a box. Let's go see a movie anytime she wanted, right? And it got to the point where they just said, "Oh, hey there, Grandma, good to see you." It always was nice. And we went to every church, every place. She knew everybody. Mm-hmm. Yep. If I'm on for more than, if I get into a good riff, I'm interrupted. But I just hang in there. And when it goes back up, when it finally is, goes back on, to my channel, those riffs, they are when they're live. But, it's also a good practice. See, every obstacle is a good opportunity to do better, right? So for a couple of weeks, I couldn't use my laptop. So I did those little shortcuts on my phone. And they were kind of interesting. Did any of you guys, between Thanksgiving and about yesterday, pretty much everything I put up on my channel was under 6-7 minutes. So, So it's interesting, all of the earth changes. We had earthquakes here. This mountain range. I live right between the Appalachian and the Blue Ridge, or the other way around, the Appalachian and the Blue Ridge. And this is one of the oldest mountain ranges on the planet. And we're starting to have earthquakes here, right? And what's going on in poor Australia. And when I lived in Australia, and I lived with an Aboriginal, the Wamajiri, in the Nukunba in 1978, 79, I lived there for almost a year. And my wife, my first wife and I, we lived there. We had no camping gear. We slept. All we had was a Mickey Mouse, a Disney sheet that we put down on the ground. And there were spiders there. They bit you. You were dead in 3 minutes. And we were like 900 miles to the closest white person. And they had every kind of spider and mosquito and fly because there were tons of cattle everywhere. So the flies were unbelievable. And all you had to do was change your diet. We stopped eating, white people food on our travel. We just ate veggies. And when we got there, we just ate what our hosts, our family, our tribe. We ate grubs and things that grew. And there's tons of water because they have these tremendous floods. And they have all these the Grand Canyon, but instead of being miles wide, they're like a couple 100 feet to 4 feet, but very deep. And so when it gets really hot, the Aborigines go down along there, and there's, the outcropping of the stones come this way, and there's like a beach along here, and the water here, and you're shaded, and all of these great little water plants tubers grow along the water. We got fish in there. We would go there, and the white people were like, "Oh, how am I going to live?" And it's like right there, just go live right there. And they knew when the floods were coming. Like one time, I used to walk about. My job was to find these tribes because there were about 800 of these folk in the 60s. And the coal company and the mining people just came out there and killed everyone. They didn't say, "Oh, we're going to put you on a bus and take you someplace else." They just want to shot them in the head. And there were about 10 of the tribe that were out there picking berries somewhere. And so they didn't get shot in the head. So when the Australians wanted to have the Olympics in Sydney, the world, they were going, "You guys are scum, I don't know." And so they wanted to prove to the UN and the international bodies that they were. So they sent me out there to find all their sacred and say, dumbass, well, the whole Nookenbah was their sacred site, not some like little spot. They were specific places. And what was quite interesting is that we would walk about, right? We just walk and walk and walk and walk and we would walk and we'd go out there for days. And there was no like, oh, there's that tree, it's this big rock. There were no landmarks. Walk to a place, dig up the dirt, and pull out a red Samsonite suitcase. And we found 12 corroborees. And in the Samsonite suitcases were their sacred artifacts. And the sacred artifacts were twigs and sticks and string that were made from hair and different colored dirt. And I don't know if you've ever seen pictures of indigenous Aborigines. They paint their faces, and they make, and the ones that you see on TV and the ones you see National Geographics aren't really the real deal. They just kind of do it. But when they really do ceremony, they make a mask on there, and then they go into state. And when I take you guys into state, they go there, and that spirit comes through that mask. It's a sitchin, right? So we did that a lot, right? And no drugs, no nothing. Little old guy, about 90 years old, he could outwalk me, outrun me. So one day we were walking along, and it was a beautiful, not a cloud in the sky, mountains around us. We're in a big valley, and he goes, "You think you can get over there in the next 20 minutes?" He had no watches. What's 20 minutes? And I go, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, we have to run on top of that mountain." I said, "Well, that's like 5 miles, and then there's a big steep. What are you talking about?" I said, "Is this a test?" Because he was always kind of working with me, and they were tests. He was my shaman teacher. He's one of my shaman teachers. I've had all these amazing teachers, and they're all named David. That was the amazing thing. Anyway, he also was Grandfather David. So, and we're 5 minutes. Hey, you want me to run? I'm tired. We've been just walking. We just walked about 10 miles. He goes, "Well, we can either run now. We've just 5 minutes, and now we only got 15 minutes to get up there, and if we don't, we'll be dead." And I go, "What?" He goes, "Well," and he just took off. So I'm like, "Okay," and he is like, he's 90 years old. He's pulling away from me, and I was probably in the best shape I'd ever been. I mean, I'm really not eating nothing but, tubers and grubs, and I'm walking miles and miles and miles every day. And, and so, um, and, I got sent out there by the Australian government, right? And when we traveled there, and you'd think they give us a car to drive. No, they made us take a bus, which was great because we saw all of Australia. We had to go from Canberra all the way down to Sydney, Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, up to Alice Springs, and then Broome, and then down to Ayers Rock, and then to Christmas Creek and the Nookumba. Anyway, they knew we were coming. I mean, they knew I was coming before I even knew I was going to Australia, because I kept having dreams about going to Australia, right? And that book, the Mutant Message. I mean, that's right on. I mean, that lady wasn't the only one getting that, message. So we're running, and I finally got, and like in front of me, it's a sky blue, beautiful day with everything. And I don't know how I made it, but I ran that 5 miles and went up that mountain. I'm at the top, and it's like 15 or so minutes, and I'm that neck of the woods. But you're in Tasmania at the time, right? But anyway, Tasmania and Australia, they're cousins, totally different, really different, but cousins still, both, taken over by the Anglo folk. It's all good. Yeah, well, good man. Yes, I need some more hot water. Yep. So I get up there, and and I'm like sweating. I'm about to keel over, and he goes, turn around. And I turn around, and there's a wall of water about 14 feet high coming across, just a wall, and behind it, these big black clouds, and it's raining torrentially, and just water, floods. And that's what's happening to Australia right now. After all these amazing fires, they're now having amazing floods, thus washing everything away. And back in the day, when the English first showed up, there was like 20 feet, thank you, sir, of black topsoil. Australia could have fed. It was the richest land. And what did the English do? They brought cattle that ate the grass to the dirt, and then these big floods would come through and wash the 20 feet of black topsoil away. And talk about earth changes, And look at what they're doing now. They're taking out whole mountains, for the nickel and the cadmium and the coal and the other minerals that are there. And so anyway, I'm up there and I'm seeing this, and I was like amazed, this guy understood that, that big black cloud was, I didn't hear any thunder. I didn't hear anything. I looked all around. It was a beautiful blue sky. When we got on top of the mountain, he turned me around. We would have been dead. He was right. And it was about 20 minutes, half an hour, by the time we got up there. Right where we had been standing, there's this wall of water, right? If you were down there, you would have been it, toast. So these folks know how to survive. And they'll survive. They'll survive everything. There's a CMG. They go down in those little canyon places, and there's caves in there. We used to go hang out there and party like it was 1999. These people liked drinking their beer. One time we did the whole tribe, all 12 of us, took a long walkabout. It was really, really hot, right? And so we went down, and this thing went for miles, But there's this river and, canyon. And some places it's wide, like a football field, and it's like the river kind of spreads out like a lake, but it's still like 1,200 feet deep. It's pretty amazing. Because I would get up the top and dive down in places where you could get up there and dive down in the water. And if you went down, 10, 15 feet from that dive, it was unbelievably cold. And then you came up into the warmth, right? And so we went to this one place where there was this plate bolted to the wall of the canyon, right? And this big metal chain going into the water. So everyone got there, and they were pulling this chain up, and up came the chain. And what was on the chain, but about 10 big nylon ropes, like pretty thick. And we pulled on them, and each had a cargo net. And they had kegs of beer in those cargo nets. Each cargo net had like 10, 15 kegs of beer. And so we pulled up one cargo net of about 10 kegs, and they had a box buried that had the thing that you put in there that you can take the beer out of the keg. And they pulled up another rope, and they had, like, it was like blew my mind. They had half a cow that had been, freezed, hermetically sealed in plastic and sealed, and it was down there. And how long it was down there, but they pulled it up, and they had in that box with the keg thing, they had a gigantic, butcher's saw, right? And a bunch of knives. And they sliced up that thing and started a big fire and just threw it in there. And they went around and picked all these tubers that were like sweet potatoes. And we threw them in the fire, and we ate the tubers and the steaks and drank beer until everyone was unbelievably whack drunk. I don't really drink a lot, so I'm just happy. But everybody else is right. And my wife, she's Irish, so she can put on the right. So they get into a fight and they start punching it out, right? And everyone's like, I'm just like watching everyone like whacking and slapping and punching, and they're laughing. It's like they're hilarious, And all of a sudden, I turn around and this guy, bam, clocks me like. And I fly across the thing and land in the water and start glug, and everyone, oh my God, and they grab me and pull me out. And I'm like seeing stars. And the guy who punched me, he's probably in his 40s or 50s. He's good. They're all good friends. They're family, right? And he's crying because I didn't realize that you weren't drunk, and I didn't realize you weren't fighting, and you were just there, and so I, and I just blindsided you, I really, I see, I know you love me, and so that was, and the white people judge them. Oh, they get drunk. Well, they get drunk like in a spiritual sense, So. Okay, let's see. Let's see. We'll go back up a bit. So it's not any more negative, buddy, than it always has been. Oh, hello, Randy Lee, Michelle Mirdad. Randy Lee, who is that? Is that Michelle? That's Michelle, right? Mirdad? I might have. Who knows? Give me a little hint. Yeah. I'm sure there are men that are faithful to their wives. Let's see. Those are good policies. Let's see. Any advice on disowning a daughter? Never do it. No matter what your kids do, you have to deal with your children. Egoless ego, right? And the other thing you got to do is you got to keep them at arm's length away, right? Same with parents. I took care of my parents for 28 years, and I was the only one of their children who, my parents, all my brothers and sisters worked for my parents, so my brothers and sisters hated my parents. Me, they were my parents. I had nothing to do with them, right? But when I came back from Ireland in 1980, my dad said, "Oh, you have to take care of me." I said, "Okay," but because my dad and both my dad and my mom had good sides, I said, "Only going to be with you when you're showing your better side. Otherwise, what if I pull down a staircase? Well, you better be on your best behavior. Otherwise, I'm not showing up." So that's kind of how you have to be with your kids, right? You got to keep them at arm's length. And my father, he would do some of the most. And so he always wanted to be a millionaire. My grandma was live like a millionaire, but don't be one. My dad wanted, so he spent his whole life being a millionaire. I never really, he wouldn't, at certain points he would have a good time. So, but he would join country clubs and yacht clubs and all this just for this status, right? And so we belonged to this one yacht club that all these rich people belonged to. And, my dad was very handsome, very amiable, and, good businessman. And he was a really good athlete. So they liked him. He could play any sport and really be good at it. So golfing and blah, blah, blah. Sailing, not so much. I learned how to sail, but one, I was about, I don't know, 6. And I was playing around in the shallow end of this gigantic pool they had there. And for some reason, my father picked me up and threw me in the deep end, which was not just, 6, 7 feet. It was like 20 feet deep because I had a tower that you could dive off of. Right? So it was pretty deep. And I'm a blah, 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 all the way down to the bottom. And instead of freaking out, I sat down on the thing and I just was looking around like, this is kind of cool. And I swore that I could breathe underwater. I was holding my breath pretty well. And, I just sat down there and everyone freaked out because I'm like 20 feet down. People couldn't, oh, we're going to get him. Oh, my God. You kind of flail. And I was just sitting down there, like looking up at everyone's legs. And this one guy got up on the tower, like a knife, went down, got me, pulled me up. And they pulled me out, and I was like, oh, okay, not bad. And so the guy who did that, he was like, the head of the pool, Olympic swimmer. He said, okay, I'm teaching you how to swim right here, right now. At least how to float. What were you doing down there? I said, well, it's cool down there. I liked it down there. It was fun. I liked it. Because I like different perspectives of things, So that thing of throwing me in the pool, in the deep end, basically, I was totally confident about doing that with anything, So I was always jumping in the deep end of everything. So I became a scholar, When that nun beat the crap out of me in first grade and I ended up studying with Maryknoll priests, this one guy, he invented the IQ test. He gave me an IQ test. I had an IQ of 180. He goes, wow, that's pretty good. I said, no. It was not like, oh, well, I'm a genius. No, I said, okay, that's cool. But he took that and went down deep into my whole everything of what I was and said, you just don't look at anything like anybody else I've ever met. You're like a different kind of human being, and that's a good thing. Now, I'm going to teach you how to navigate. That's what he did. That's 6, how to navigate. And so instead of people freaking out, I said, oh, we got to put them in an insane asylum or give them drugs. And luckily for me, they didn't have those drugs. Right? But I had everything you can imagine. And ADHD, you name it, I had it. But he realized that those were just characteristics and you could take the good side of that. And he helped me, like I had a stutter. He helped me get over that, especially after the nun broke my jaw. I definitely stuttered after that one. And I had it was murdered, the first instant I was born. I died when I was, 5, 6, and 10, and 21, and this guy helped me, right? And then another one, so he was a psychologist, and the other one was a brain scientist, right? And they were studying my brain. They had no real instrumentality, but they invented tests for me to play, and I just thought they were fun games, to put things, blocks together and shapes together and colors together, and what's the thing that doesn't belong there, and they would show it to me and take it away, and I'd have to tell them everything about it that I saw, right? And they kind of showed me how to meditate. They showed me how to remote view. They called it different things. And there was a guy who was a linguist, that's where I got into etymology, what the meaning of words. Other guys were sociologists, so I was really into understanding, orientations, and so I really realized what people were and that everybody was different and you didn't judge them. They were just who they were, It's what was in their heart that mattered. And that was what was truly amazing about Martin Luther King. Now, I saw, my grandma brought me to that speech in D.C. She goes, because her church was, there were some women who were going to go hear this, and so she was going to go down there, and we did, and she had a friend in D.C. So we stayed there. She wanted to stay at D.C. She wanted to go to the mall, wanted to be part of this. And then we stayed there a week or so and went to all those museums and stuff and saw all kinds of things. And that's when my grandma, from being a baby till 7, she just kept exposing me to. From 7, she handed me back to my parents, and I was in that, pack of feral wolves. She kept coming every Sunday, taking care of me, and making sure that I was okay. And she only lived a couple blocks. She had a house not too far. I mean, she had her Harlem place, and she had her house in Long Island, where my parents lived, and so where my dad grew up. And so I would just walk the 2 or 3, and I could walk 2 or 3 blocks to there. And when I was a little kid, I would walk the streets of Harlem, 96th Street. I'd go to the park. I'd walk all over the place. And when I was 9, I started working for Grandpa Stahl. My parents lived in Park Avenue. I'd walk from the Park Avenue apartment over to 30 something, 32nd, 33, something like that, and 2nd Avenue. They were off of 2nd Avenue in the lower 30s. One of their shops. They had a shop there, and they had a shop on Reed Street down in lower Manhattan, way below, down near Wall Street. And, near Chambers Street, right? And, about 8 blocks to the World Trade Center. So, I was walking around New York City. I was walking around this city in Long Island because, my dad had thrown me at 6 into the den. So I never, and a lot of people can feel anxious about my presence because I am comfortable with who I am, and the realization about the only reason I'm here is to understand of my soul, right? To ascend my free will soul, right? It's why I'm here, right? It's not to make a lot of money. It's not to prestige or be high on the status ladder, any of the above. I've been all those things, right? I went to high school with the richest people in the world. Joe Kennedy, Robert Kennedy's middle son, was my roommate, and he was a total dweeb. He masturbated the same time every night, and just before he came, hey Joe, what are you doing over there? We used to go in the bathroom, like the rest of us, when we hid our Playboys. So it's to judge people. Oh, he's this or she's that. No, it's not. What are they doing? How are they in service to love's co-creation? That's what matters, right? What you're doing, how you're helping all of your relations. That's what we're here to do, right? What else do you guys say? Boop, boop, boop. Yeah. It wasn't like I went. That's all I had to eat. Like when I was living with Wallem and Jerry, they had this thing that was like unbelievable. I loved it. It was like pork rinds with chocolate sauce with sprinkles on it, right? And the more they get, I just loved. It was crunchy. It was crisp. It had this chocolatey, dark taste and a little sweet little sprinkle. Anyway, I used to bug, what is this? Where did you get this? Blah, blah, blah. Where's the fryer later? What's going on? And so one day, the old guy said, you want to see what I tell you? It tells you a story. It doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong or true or false. It's what it does to you and how it motivates you and changes you, right? So anyway, so he goes over this piece of bark, and he always served it to me on this like tray of bark. He pulled this bark, and there are all these grubs, right? Swirling chrome, just slimy, right? And he picked up a rock and he just smushed them all, and all the blood came squirting out, and that was the chocolate sauce. And all the feces in their little colons came, bubbling up to the top, and that was the sprinkles. So the pork rinds were these slimy grubs. The chocolate sauce was their blood, and the sprinkles was their feces. I couldn't eat it. I mean, it was something I loved, adored. It was like ambrosia. And once he showed me what it really was, from the context of my stupid white man self, couldn't eat it. So after that, I never ate because they didn't have a supermarket nearby, and that was one of the major things I ate. And so, I never again questioned where this or that came from. They said, "How's that?" I'd always answer the same way: "Tastes like chicken." Do 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 do. Let's see. The word genius comes from genie, which goes back to the change, which is a demon. Therefore, calling them a demon. Well, my grandma used to call me Wuziel, which in her dialect in Italy meant little devil. I always was getting, doing things people would go, like, when I was 10, I made, a like 12 Tesla coil. That's like a billion volts. And I was, making the base current from a Van de Graaff generator, right? Static electricity. And so I had these barrel capacitors that basically gave it this on and off, frequency of a scalar motif. And I had it in my grandmom's house, and I would torque it up. And we lived right in the path of Kennedy, right? And every time I would turn that sucker on, it blurred, like how the YouTube goes, your signal is right. I would obliterate all of the radar for Kennedy Airport and LaGuardia. And then I do it, and the ozone would get so thick, I'd have to turn it off, right? And then I would go upstairs and hang with my grandma. So I never turned it on for that long. But they kind of like closed in, and then one day, boom, the current in our whole block, they turned the whole block off. And my grandma goes, come upstairs, Albert, come upstairs, Al. You Woodsy Al. And I look out, she goes, look out there. And we're surrounded by the FBI, the FCC, you name it. Every alphabet soup there was there. And they knocked on the door, and my grandma, she goes, go sit over there. Go turn on the TV. Well, the TV wouldn't work. It was turned off. So I just sat in this chair. And, and so they were there, and they had their, they were like pissed off. And they thought we were like, Russian spies or something. I don't know what they thought. But anyway, they knocked on the door, and they had triangulated where I was. But see, it was scalar. It was not, Hertzian frequency. So it gave them a little problem. Anyway, so they had some pretty smart people there from, what's that lab in Long Island? It starts with a B. But anyway, they had some really, not just your basic policemen. And so they knocked on the door, and they said, we want to come in? What are they started getting hard case with my grandma. And my grandma just stared, and I said, no, you're not coming in. You got a warrant to come in? Well, they didn't, because they didn't know exactly who we were or where this place was. They just kind of, came because they zoomed in on I left it on long enough for them to kind of finally figure it out. Anyway, so she wouldn't let him in because they didn't have a warrant. And she started, she knew the Constitution better than they did. So they were like, oh, we can get one. She said, good, go get one. And so they went down, and they were talking in a huddle and looking out the window. And this guy in a very nice suit, obviously the man in charge, white hair, goes, ma'am, I would, they're going to stay outside, and there's nothing going to be done. We're not charging with it. There's nothing wrong. We've just, found an emanation of a radio, but it's not even, it's very exotic kind of tech. We just want to know what this stuff is, what you're doing. And she goes, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm old saying, Grandma, that's my, 10-year-old grandson over there. So he comes over and he goes, you're the only two in the house. And my grandma goes, yep. So he sits down next to me and goes, son, what have you been doing? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, you seem like a very smart boy. Do you have a ham radio downstairs? I go, no. He goes, and then he goes kind of through a whole, he goes, any kind of, says, do you have a Tesla coil? And I'm a guy who doesn't lie. He goes, yeah, I got one. He goes, how, what's the diameter, and what's the frequency height? I said, well, diameter's about 50, maybe 70 inches, and that's about 10 feet. He goes, to the cone? I goes, yep. He goes, and how are you charging it? I said, with a Van de Graaff generator and some drum capacitors. He goes, and what's the, electromagnetic force of the capacitor? And I told him, because I found them in a dump, and they were like gigantic. They were like from the telephone company. And she goes, can I see it? I go, I take him down there. By that time, he's like flattering me, and I'm like, oh, and he's a smart guy. And Brookhaven, he was from Brookhaven National Laboratory, physicist, electrical engineer. And I'm talking about Tesla. He goes, I knew Tesla. I said, you knew Tesla? I said, do you know my mentor? He goes, who's your mentor? I said, Grandpa Stoll. Oh, yes, I do know Grandpa Stoll. So anyway, he goes down. He goes, son, you can't play with this kind of stuff in your basement. I go, I can't? He goes, no, it's like having an atomic bomb in your basement. You can't do that. Well, we're not going to arrest you or arrest your grandma or do anything, I'm in charge here. I think that's pretty cool, but I'm going to have to take this away from you, and you can't do this again. So, Miss Art Doll, back to you. My grandma used to call me Little Devil, and I've known a number of demons. See, the whole thing about demons is that they are a portal for you, and if you have weaknesses, what they do is they bring the weaknesses out in you. It's like, Michael, what's his name? The vice president. He won't go have lunch with another woman unless his wife comes with him, because he can't trust himself, He doesn't let himself be with children because he can't trust himself. So I'm not there to judge, and if, Miss Art Doll, you have to realize that, we'll use the term God. Do you know where the word God comes from? From Sumerian? It means Baal. You know who Baal is? Lucifer. God isn't some guy up in the clouds in a chair. No, it's not anthropomorphized. God is love's co-creation, right? So, love's co-creation made everything. God, love's co-creation made Lucifer, made everything. Oh, well, I use the capacitors instead of Linden jars. And, but I love Linden jars, that little aluminum, right? I love that. But yes, this was pretty hefty. The ozone, the whole basement was, see how this is glowing blue? It was kind of like that, but even more intense. Well, you're just getting into semantics, and, I'm not an expert, I don't claim to be. I'm just a storyteller. And I don't judge anyone, So, hey, Mr. Randy Lee, I'm back. He's back. The one creator, yep. And so the one creator created everything, everything. And so you can't judge. There is no, what the yin yang symbol is. It's black, white. The event horizon, which is the little sandbox that the universe is in. You know, and that little swirly thing is our life's path. The Bible. And in the beginning, everything's black. Well, that's the black side. And then Lucifer got pissed off because love's co-creation created our innocent free will. Because up until then, everybody was in a hegemony. They all followed the rules, right? And Lucifer was, the head angel. He was in charge of the rules. And then when love's co-creation kind of changed it and made these what, they're not as beautiful. And he kind of got really upset like a little child. And that's where the Big Bang came from. Lucifer destroying heaven. Right? So we were put in to the Garden of Eden, right? And Lucifer, basically tempted and challenged us, which gave us the opportunity to become better, because it's our free will to choose to be the better self, to be our better angel instead of our little woodsy owl. And, it kind of depends on, yes, I was like doing some pretty amazing things, but they weren't to hurt anybody. They weren't mean. They weren't cruel. They weren't any of those things. They were just because I was interested in electricity. I still am, right? So. Yep, and I'll be around. Meaning, I was supposed, I died a bowl of spaghetti going on 7 years now, and I came back. I lost 270 pounds or so, and I'm almost, I'm about 40 pounds from my high school weight. My best weight, 180. So, I'm glad you enjoy my stories, Art Doll. And, like I said, they're stories to make you think. That's all they're there for, right? To, test your own mettle, right? Well, it's 1 hour, 13 minutes and 55 seconds. And there's how many of you? 5 of you watching. And so, Art Doll, when did you start watching the channel here? Elasticize the brain, exactly. And to expand the heart, to always come from love's co-creation. Everything else is an illusion. Anyone's book, anyone's religion, most religions are just a business plan. I had a bishop as a godfather, and he wanted me to be a rocket scientist for the Pope. And, I was sent to a seminary, but they were like, because I was always hanging out with poor people, trying to, they had indentured servants working as the campus people, in the kitchen and fixing the stuff and mowing the lawn. And I hung out with those, and they had a farm, so I hung out with those folks, not the rich folk. So go, Art Doll, go to the channel, and I must have close to 1,000 shows, right? Get yourself, Paradise or a dartboard, and get 3 numbers, and then go watch that show. I don't like being interrupted. So, yeah. And so, so go watch any of those others, especially the guided meditations. You might like those because guided meditation is prayer. That's all it is, prayer. Why all religions have prayers, because it puts them in that state where they're breathing and cleansing themselves and getting closer to love's co-creation. That's what it's all about, right? Illuminating yourself with photonic light, not incandescent light. Lucifer's light is incandescent. It has shadows, right? The shadow. And with the shadow, you can't see anything. Photonic light come from love's co-creation's creative point. And photonic light has no shadows whatsoever. Do a little homework on photonic light. See what you get. Anyway, I'm going to sign off now because I have a few errands and I want to get home or get into the deep green before it gets too cold and too dark. And so I'll see you later. Right now, it's like, 19 degrees out there. Ooh, nippy. So, okay, gang, I love you all, and I'll try and do this tomorrow, maybe a little earlier. Who knows? I guess I got to drive 20 miles in any direction to find someplace where this thing will work. Okay? Okay. Love you guys. Stay well. Be good. I always have an excellent day, and I'm glad you're with us, part of the cadre. See you, buddy. See everybody else who's there. Okay? Okay. And I'm glad you've shown up on the chat. And I don't, you know, I'm a no wrench guy, unless you're a really nasty troll, and you're not. You're a beautiful person. I see the love and the beauty and the kindness and the grace that you are, Art Doll. So, and see you, Randy, and stay well, my cadre. Okay? Okay. Boop, 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 boop.